Jim Smith, who works with us in Minnesota and who coordinates the Queer Catholic Faith series, will conduct our very first intergenerational interview. Hi, Jim.
Hello,
Welcome.
thank you.
Thank you. And I get to meet a lot of amazing people in my work, but I have to say that tonight's guests are among the most wonderful and inspiring people that I've ever had the opportunity to work with. I'm thrilled that you're going to have a chance to hear from them too. Casey and Mary Ellen Lopata are best known as the co-founders of Fortunate Families, an organization that they have led since 2004. They've also served as consultants to the Bishops' Committee that drafted Always Our Children, and they've received both New Ways Ministries Bridge Building Award and the Dignity USA President's Award for their work. They've been married 49 years, live in Rochester, New York, are the parents of 4 grown children and have 11 grandchildren, and are godparents to 2 sons of a married gay couple. And one of Mary Ellen and Casey's children, the one who inspired their ministry and advocacy, is Jim Lopata, who has made a huge impact on the LGBTQ community here in Boston, where I live. His writing has been recognized with numerous awards, and he currently edits Boston Spirit, which is the premier LGBTQ magazine in all of New England. He's also served as editor-in-chief for LGBT newspapers in Newsweekly and the New England Blade. He's been in the New York Times, a featured commentator on National Public Radio. He narrates the Boston Pride Parade for public television. He gets to vote for the Grammys for his musical work. He's an award-winning off-Broadway director. He just does it all. And he also just recently graduated with a master's in theology from Harvard University. So all of these people are very, very busy, very giving, and we're grateful they've made time for us in their schedule. So I will now turn it over to Jim Smith and the members of the Lopata family. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Marianne. Great to see the three of you. Now, just for our attendees, you may wonder why Casey and Mary Ellen look to be in 2 very different places, but they are actually right next to each other, believe it or not. There you go. There's the forehead of Casey. So the wonders of computer design. So we've got 2 very different colors there, but they're still speaking to each other.
Yeah.
So I want to start with a pretty basic question, pretty obvious question to first to Casey and Mary Ellen. We're wondering how you conceived of this idea of Fortunate Families, and we have a feeling that your son Jim has a little bit to do with that, and which is one of the reasons why we invited him here tonight. But say a little bit about how Fortunate Families was born.
Well, Fortunate Families had a very long gestation period. Jim came out to us in 1983, and it was a good 9 years before Casey and I came out of that parental closet. When Jim came out to me, I went through most of those emotions that most parents go through. Fear for his safety, guilt, grief, and a number of other emotions. But I was very ignorant about homosexuality, and the only thing that I knew for sure was that I loved Jim, and I knew that God loved him. There was just no doubt about that. But I needed a lot of education, so I started reading, and the pickings were pretty slim back in '83 for good things to read. And Jim was very instrumental in kind of nudging Casey and I forward. even though it took so long for us to really be totally out, he kept nudging us.
How did that
He
happen?
wouldn't
How
let
did he
us
nudge you?
say, "Jim, I love you." Well, he would not let us say, just, "Jim, I love you, but I don't want to talk about
Hmm.
it," which a lot of parents do. It's it's just uncomfortable for many parents to talk about this, but he wouldn't
Can
let
I
us
give
do that. So, hmm?
can I give one anecdote of us? So I remember coming home from college break once, and I was going on and on about somebody I was dating, and this was pretty early on in the process. And you said to me, you stopped me for a moment. You said, "I love you. I'm fine with you being gay or whatever. Um, you've had many years to come to your comfort level. I need a little more time."
Hmm.
And it was beautifully said, and I got it, and it was great.
Hmm.
And I think that's a really important message for parents to understand, and to be able to say to their children, and for their gay LGBTQ children to understand that, everybody in this equation needs some patience. But 9 years on, Casey and I found ourselves at a New Ways Ministry conference, which really changed our lives. We knew that we couldn't, if we really loved Jim the way we said we did, we needed to speak out. We needed to do something. And because our experience was, well, there's no typical experience, but we did experience a lot of the same um, issues, the same emotions, the same kind of roadblocks that many parents do. And we had met many parents over those years at conferences, at P-Flag meetings, and we knew that in the for Catholic parents there was an additional sense of isolation, which was uh, kind of the overwhelming, the overarching uh, uh, experience of parents. They didn't know who they could talk to in the Catholic Church who would be accepting, who wouldn't be judgmental of their child, who would just listen to them and and kind of relate where they could. And we thought we might be able to do that. And we were inspired at that New Ways Ministry Symposium in 1992. And came back to Rochester and with a group of other people decided that we needed to do something. It took us another 2 or 3 years to really get rolling. And then, and that was kind of in a loose association with the Diocese of Rochester. And in 2004, Casey and I kind of reached a place where we could not, we didn't feel we could speak as forthrightly as we wanted to and still be affiliated with the diocese. So that's when we decided to strike out on our own and we formed Portrait
Hmm.
Family. That's kind of it in a
Hmm.
nutshell.
Casey, anything to add or subtract?
For me, well, not
Good.
subtract. For me, the big question in my mind was, can Jim be gay and Catholic? And I was working on theology degree. I was actually in the deacon program, in deacon formation program in Rochester. And during all my courses, that was the question that I kept searching for. And in essence, did moral discernment, which is one of the key elements of teaching for the Catholic Church, looked at scripture, looked at church teaching, looked at the sciences, and personal experience and experience of others. And after going through all that, I mean, reading things like Daniel Haimoniak would have in Scripture, um, church teaching back then, a lot of it was Bob Nugent and Janine Gramick, of course, John McNeil and others. The sciences back in 73, 74 is when orientation was taken off of the mental disorder list by the APA. And of course, personal experience, we knew Jim, and Jim was just fine. And the bottom line was, sure, Jim can be gay and be Catholic, and that's perfectly
Hmm.
okay. So that's my summary of my short
Sure, sure.
story. I think the other thing I can add about fortunate families is, um, besides feeling freedom from the diocese, we thought there was a special niche for parents, for Catholic parents. Um, and in a national organization. So we became national, working with Catholic parents. And the special niche is because Catholic parents have leverage within the Catholic Church. They can't be dismissed as easily as gay and lesbian people when you're talking to the
Hmm.
institutional church. We have been cornerstones in the Catholic Church, and we can work from within the church. So we felt there's we're really a special niche that needs to be part of
So,
this
so
movement.
not just Fortunate Families isn't just a ministry to Catholic parents as a way of sort of being a guide, being a support, being in solidarity with parents who may be at different stages in coming to an acceptance of their daughters or sons, but also as a ministry by Catholic parents. Is that accurate? So you're about empowering
Yeah,
parents
yeah.
to stand and to speak. And hopefully as a unified voice to the powers that be. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I think an anecdote about that is we went to the first New Ways Ministry retreat for parents back in
Hmm.
1994. And I think that must have been a record year for profits for Kleenex because there were a lot of tears and fears in that workshop. And through the years, we went through a lot more workshops with New Ways. And back in 2006, we did a survey of parents for fortunate families. And by that time, the majority of parents were no longer tears and fears. They were ire
Yeah,
and fire.
yeah,
They wanted
yeah,
to do something. So that's how we got into the advocacy piece of ministry. We're still there for any parents, no matter
yeah,
where they
yeah.
are.
Good. Jim, it sounds like you carried a bit of patience with your parents. I mean, 10 years, more than 10 years of coming to some full acceptance, and an ability to stand behind you and with you and in a very public way. What was that like for you? I mean, in that decade since you came out, were you always
Oh,
patient?
it, well, I don't know. It seemed. I mean, despite the little anecdote that I gave, it seemed like it was a pretty quick
Mm.
turnaround. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I remember many years ago, and I think it was early on, my parents calling me and saying, "So we just wrote an op-ed for the local paper about you being gay, and we want to make sure it's okay before we put it in the paper." And I was like, I mean, for a lot. I mean, I haven't been in the gay press for a long time. They've been much more involved in gay issues than I have been. In fact, on AOL, my profile used to say that the gay son of Casey and Mary Ellen Lopata, because more gay people knew my parents than they knew me. So I don't think it was a very. I mean, maybe it was at the time, but it's been an amazing journey. It's incredible what they do. I'm very proud
And
of
it
them.
sounds like you were proud of them from the get go. Once they started stepping out, it sounds like you had no
Oh
trouble
yeah.
with that. Yeah,
Oh yeah. No, I mean, they raised me with good Catholic values, which is, that, you know, you love people, God loves you, and that, you be of service and you help people, and that's what they taught me, that's what they've done, and that's what they do with
yeah,
their ministry, and it's a wonderful
yeah.
thing.
I want to return to you, Jim, because you've taken some turns in your own spiritual trek. But I want to backtrack
Yeah.
to you, Mary Ellen and Casey. yeah, I'm reminded when I look at the two of you. I'm reminded of the Archbishop in my diocese, which is St. Paul, Minneapolis, in Minnesota, and he has gone public by this. This is his response to parents of daughters and sons who are gay, parents who are reaching out to the Archbishop and sincerely looking for some pastoral care and guidance. And his response is, my duty is to tell you that if you support your child in their relationships, in their same-sex relationships, then your salvation is at risk. And parents, most parents have a visceral response to that, and that visceral response is, you have to be crazy. This is not how I'm being led from within. And this isn't just progressive Catholics. This is, these are folks all across the political and social spectrum. Their response is visceral, and I think it's a more ready response now than it was back in the early '80s when Jim came out to the two of you. So there's a lot of angry Catholic parents out there, and my bet is that 90% do not know that Fortunate Families exists. I'm betting most parents in Catholic churches don't know that this movement, this community exists. So how have you been getting the word out, and how can we help? And I'm going to ask the attendees tonight to use your chat box to offer your own ideas about how do we effectively reach people in the pews so that they know that this exists and is there for them. Casey, Mary Ellen?
Well, that's an excellent question, and it's a question that Casey and I and the board of directors of Fortunate Families struggle with all the time. And as the generations, roll over, it becomes even more important to investigate other ways to let people know that an organization like
Mm-hmm.
this exists. And we're because of our ages, we're not quite as fluent with
Mm-hmm.
social media as we would like to be. So that's an area that we know that we have to really take
Right.
and run with.
You're on
But we
Facebook
have a
though,
lot of
right?
learning to do.
Yep. Just
We are.
just
We are.
Google Facebook and Fortunate Families, and or when you're on Fortunate Families, you can find it, or when you're on Facebook, you can find it pretty easily. So that's a start. That's good.
Yeah. Now the problem, or the challenge, I should say, has always been, how do you reach parents at that exact moment when they know they
Yeah.
need you? And I would like to take it a step beyond that and say that what we need to do is be able to communicate with all Catholic parents so that when they learn a child is gay, they'll already have the knowledge and the spiritual wherewithal to embrace that child and not worry about what any bishop tells them about their salvation or their child's
So
salvation.
it's a ministry. You see this as a ministry not just to the parents of gay kids, but to the entire pew sitting church. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's pretty exciting.
So part of some of the things we've tried to do to help with this, especially reaching parents who are in more rural areas, feeling more isolated, we have introduced the concept of a listening parents network. So we have some 140 parents in about 27 states who have put their contact information on our
Okay.
website, uh, email address, phone number, what have you, so that any parent can contact them and share experiences, and share concerns and questions and what have you, so they no longer feel isolated.
Yeah.
But we still have that problem of getting that information out there to people who need that at the particular time that they need it.
Right. Right. I think that's a huge.
Actually, a lot of,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that many people uh, don't look for us because they don't believe that there could be anything Catholic and positive out there.
Exactly, exactly. So I think the potential is
You
still
know?
huge for fortunate families. And again, I want to appeal to the 57 folks who have logged in to this web show to use the chat box and give Casey and Mary Ellen your ideas as to how we might spread this this good news to folks who haven't heard of it yet. And we'll have record of this chat long after this show ends. So we won't be looking at it during the show tonight. But please give us your ideas. I want to turn to you, Jim. So your dad wanted to make sure. Yeah,
Excuse
sure.
me, Jim. Jim, I just
You
want to
bet.
say one other thing. One thing that has been a tremendous help is our coalition partners with CTA,
Call to
New Age
action.
Ministry, and Dignity. So that has really been helpful in getting the word out.
Yep, and we'll continue to do that. So, Jim, your dad wanted to make sure that you could be gay and Catholic at the same time, right? So, how did you
Yeah.
measure up to that?
Well, he thought I could be he thought I could be gay and Catholic, and then maybe I didn't. I don't know.
So, tell us a little bit about where
I've
you've come from those days.
Well, this is interesting. I remember I interviewed my parents for an article several years ago about like this topic and me. And at that time, I was still going to Catholic Mass, and I was Catholic. I was active in a parish and what have you. But part of that interview was, what if I did leave the church? Because like my dad said, he was very concerned. This was a huge concern of his when I came out. And we all agreed that I could be gay and Catholic, but I've been on a journey moving more and more away from the church. And they basically were great. They said, you need to go where you need to go to find what you need. And it was not long after that I went for a weekend retreat to a Zen Buddhist monastery, which was the primary religion I've been toying with. And when I got back from that retreat, I can't remember which bishop's letter it was. The Halloween letter, I don't know, something,
Take your
there
pick.
were words about me, that I was evil, that I was all this stuff. And I came out of that retreat and I thought, at the Zen Buddhist monastery, they were primarily concerned with my spiritual development. And I looked at that letter and the relentless letters that have come out, and I just thought, I don't know that the leaders in this particular church do have my spiritual best interests at heart. Which is a hard thing to say because this slideshow has pictures of me dressing up as the Pope when I was a
Can
kid.
we put that back on? We got to see that
as a
again.
kid, little Catholic boy who considered seminary and, I'm in my journey along the way. I mean, there's two things. I want to tie this back into some of the earlier conversation here. I mean, the first thing is I still get a lot from the Catholic Church and from Catholic teachings and from what I grew up with and what my parents have instilled in me as Catholic and the church that I grew up in and the church today even. And I learned a lot of things in my theology program that were new and exciting about the Catholic Church. What's interesting to me, part of this discussion is how do we reach these Catholic parents? So many of the people that I know who were raised Catholic or what have you, who are gay like me, have kind of left the church and are at peace with it. And when I tell them what my parents are doing, first of all, they're shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, oh, my parents could really use that. Because I don't think it's like me and the people that I relate to that have so many questions about it, but there's a concern with their parents, and they have no idea that there's resources out there because their parents are worried, because the bishops are telling them to worry about their salvation and
Right.
all this stuff.
Right.
And there aren't those resources. So, I mean, when I posted this webinar on my Facebook page, I got several comments. One of them was like, "Oh my goodness, I never thought I would see this in my lifetime, this kind of organization." And hopefully they signed on or sent their parents. I wasn't sure if they could get on there, but like you said, the transcript will be here. But this is an important part of the process is, is that I know that the parents love their gay children, and like my parents have struggled with the church's teaching on to come to some reconciliation about that. I think a lot of the kids have come to resolution, but now they're worried about their parents.
Yeah.
But they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know that this exists.
Yeah. Right. Right. So your own spiritual hunger has led you to consider Zen Buddhism, and just as an aside, but an important one, because this queer Catholic faith is really about our own our personal journeys as well, and it's about spirit. Um, can you say a little bit about how your experience of Zen Buddhism and Christianity as you knew it growing up, where they converge, where they intersect, where the roads meet each other?
I was just thinking about where they diverge.
Yeah, start there.
We had a long talk about this the other night with my parents. I mean, I think one of the places I'm at right now with the differences between the two is Christianity tends to emphasize itself as more of a revealed religion, that there is revelation and that is unquestioned. You get it more, the fundamentalism with the Bible, but also the church has this sense that, what is revealed to them and that they have the answer. Whereas in Buddhism, they espouse certain truths, just like the Catholic Church does, but they always say, investigate. You don't have to take us for our word. What I take from that Buddhist tradition back to the Catholic Church is I say there is a lot that's amazing here, and when I investigate many Catholic teachings, it's incredible. In fact, one of the great things that I learned in theology school from one of my Catholic theology professors, I took a modern Catholic theology class, was how much the Church really does investigate. It allows its theologians to investigate a lot as long as they don't share it with the public. And that's exciting, that the Church really does allow that. I wish they allowed more room for that. But I don't know if that doesn't really answer your question, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I hear you. In a few minutes, we're gonna turn to the folks who are attending tonight and ask for your questions for any of these three who are our guests tonight. So if you haven't already thought about what you might want to ask them, please start now and use the question and answer box, which is to the right of the icon that says text chat. Okay, so try to avoid using the text chat box for your questions, and click out of the question and answer box for your question. And you can start asking those now, and Logan and Marianne will behind the scenes be choosing and posting some of these questions, and hopefully all if we have the time. But start ahead here, and I'm going to have to maximize here. Let me start with this. Melissa from Cincinnati says, my mom is completely unable to accept my gay brother. She is a very conservative and traditional Catholic. Any suggestions? So, Mary Ellen, Casey?
Oh, well, I think that conservative parents, as well as those who are more on the progressive side, most Catholics I would say all Catholics are brought up with the idea, with the teaching of the church, that each child is a gift from God. And I think if you can start as a parent, if you're really having trouble, if you can start with that idea that this child of mine is a gift from God, it's a little toehold that you can use to start looking at a larger picture. What is this? How is this child different now that I know they're LGBT or T or Q than they were before I knew? What are the good qualities about this person? What is their soul like? Instead of always thinking about what's out of our realm of experience, but thinking of that gift of God, which is, I mean, the church tells us that over and over, and all of a sudden this gift is no good. I don't think so, but I guess that's in a brief moment. That's all I can
I love your
suggest.
image, Mary Ellen, of asking the parent the question, what does the soul, what do you think the soul of your child looks like? I love that. That's a great image. Casey, any thoughts?
I would add, yeah, I would add, suggest having the person, is it your sister? Well, anyway, have them read Always Our
It was a
Children.
gay brother.
It's not a perfect document by any means. Okay, have them read Always Our Children. Not a perfect document by any means, but the language is friendly, welcoming, and it has some good quotes in there about from the bishop saying that in you, my homosexual brothers and sisters, God's love is revealed. So I think that's a good start from something official from the church that may address some of those initial concerns that your brother may have.
That's a great point. And Casey, can you tell Melissa where she can find that? Do you know if that text is always on our children? Is that online? Is that available online? Do you know, or have the bishops taken that down?
It's on the Fortunate Family's website.
There we go.
There's a link to it in resources and articles
Great.
and brochures under the
Great.
resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
But
Jim, do you have anything to add to that? As you have experienced your own parents' response to you through the years, anything to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, if the gay brother and I lost the question there.
Melissa has a mother who's very conservative, and Melissa has a gay brother, and her mother is having a very hard time accepting.
Right, Melissa, her name, yeah. So if Melissa and her gay brother just continue to love their mother, as much as possible. Seems, it's like, just because my mom said she needs more time, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you more time, but I'm also going to talk about it some more. It's like, but in a loving way, like to say, okay, I get it. It's like to remain in dialogue, and to love.
I would think in this day and age, even more so than the 80s, I bet you kids are probably quite impatient if their parents are moving slowly in when it comes to acceptance. And so that's great advice, Jim. And it's hard advice. I think, in the 21st century, when we're thinking, by God, you got to be up to speed here. Come on, get with the times. And I think to continue to allow not just our parents, but other people in our lives who are having a heck of a time accepting marriage equality, for instance. Allow them some space and keep nudging, keep asking the questions, keep talking about our lives, and continue to love them. That's great. So this question from James. Would you, from D.C., wouldn't you guess that perhaps now maybe half the dioceses in the U.S. have at least one designated, yes, at least one designated gay welcoming parish? Is this too optimistic? The word always spreads from such a parish. So, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's true? Do you think half the dioceses have at least one designated gay welcoming parish? I don't know what designated means, but
Well, I know New Ways Ministry has a list of welcoming parishes. I think there's over 200 on their list. I'm not sure well, I'm sure they're not in every diocese in the country, but I think there are. I think Jim is probably right. The problem is finding out which ones they are, and that changes, of course, as pastors change and what have you. Um, but
New Ways
and
Ministry is
there's
a
degrees
great
of
resource,
welcoming.
isn't it? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. That
New, new,
their list, by the way, is besides their own website, it's also linked on the Fortunate Families website.
great, great, great. And Casey,
I would be surprised. I would be surprised if any parish was designated
yeah,
as a welcoming parish. I think
mm-hmm.
there are welcoming parishes that are allowed to continue if they're quiet, but I don't think there's a diocese that would designate a parish.
Right,
Well,
right.
the one diocese that has on their website parishes with ministries is the Los Angeles Diocese for sure. And I think there may be a couple others, but that one comes to mind because there's a number of them with ministries for gay and lesbian people and ministries for parents in the Los Angeles Diocese.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let me ask you this, and I'm inspired by one of the questions that an attendee just asked. Casey or Mary Ellen, we can't presume that every bishop and every priest is not willing to listen. There are clerics out there who indeed are very willing to listen. How would you advise a parent to approach the priest in his or her parish to see if they have an openness to support something like, just publicizing the existence of Fortunate Families in the bulletin, or to keep it on his at the corner of his desk when parents do come in and talk. Want to talk to him, that he has that resource available, or simply asking that the parish be more welcoming and inclusive. How might a parent approach a priest? Any idea? Any advice?
The very best thing to do is to tell your story. Make an appointment with your pastor or a pastoral associate and tell them what it's like to be the parent of a gay child and a Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if their response is pastoral, you can, kind of inch forward another step. But that stories, they can't argue with your story.
Yeah. Tell the story. Put flesh and blood on real lives of real people. Thank you, Jim.
Just a quick thing behind the question is that idea of you're not an out parent in your parish, and that there's some fear around that because you don't know what you're going to get, and it's your parish, so you're going to keep going there. Just my journalism background, you can find a lot about people if you look at your priest's Facebook page, or if you Google them. You may find that your parish, do a little investigation background. You may find that they have gay friends. You may see posting, you know what I mean? You can do some background research to feel a little more comfortable about what you're going into.
Cool. By the way, there's a priest or a religious brother who's attending now and letting us know from Berkeley, California, that he's supportive. So David Matz, good to have you here. Thank you. Another question here. Sonia from Topeka. Jim, did you move away from the church, or did the church move away from you? We want your definitive answer.
I just think of that famous quote from Pope Benedict, who said that the church, that he hasn't changed, that the church has, or that what was it? Yeah, he has not changed, but that the church has. Um, I don't know. That's a hard question. Like move. What do I mean by move? Um, I don't mean to get all esoteric on it or anything. I guess it's probably a little bit of both. Um, I mean, I think I've moved toward Buddhism. There's a lot about Buddhism that I really, it's a worldview and a system that just the deeper I get into it, the more it just makes complete sense to me and it works for me. So I find myself moving toward Buddhism. There have been times when I feel like I've been moving away from the church and times when I'm feeling like the church is moving away from me. I think it's just part of a natural journey for me. Like many of my Catholic gay friends have left the church. They say that the church has left them and they've gone into other Christian churches. I've moved away from a more Christian orientation. Um, I can't answer that definitively, but there is a sense, I mean, behind that question I hear, there is a sense for me, yes. I mean, a quick anecdote. Easter morning a few years ago, I just was inspired. I woke up at dawn and I went to the local Catholic church. And it was at one of those big, I mean, I'm sure it was huge and filled with people in the 1950s. It was like a 1950s style building. There were like maybe 12 people there scattered around the pews. There was a priest presiding from Nigeria with a thick accent. It was very, they didn't sing the psalm. Like this was Easter morning, and I thought, and I'm in a very gay neighborhood, like Jamaica Plain, Boston is the 5th most populated area with lesbian couples in the nation. Like this, I thought, if the church had played things right, this church would have been filled with people. And then I walked 5 minutes, a few blocks away to an Episcopalian church that was just overflowing with gay people and their families and kids running around and an open, welcoming parish. And, I sat in the back and I'm getting weepy. I cried. I was like, they don't get it. They don't get, I mean, the spirit was so alive in this other church that was not Catholic. And so, yeah, I mean, did the church move away? I don't know. You could say they put a stake in the ground and, I didn't like where the stake was put. And so I left and we left. But I think they're missing out on the spirit. And it's really unfortunate.
The sense I have of Jim is, Anselm said it's faith seeking understanding.
Yep.
Well, it works two ways. It's also understanding seeking faith. And I sense that's some of what Jim is saying.
Got a question from...
We can talk more offline.
Got a question from Gene from Honolulu. If a particular community does not have a Fortunate Families group, do you encourage them to contact their local PFLAG chapter or other supportive groups? And he says in Honolulu, our Dignity chapter works with PFLAG, Oahu, as well as the group called the Moms. So what do you say?
Absolutely. I think we really need more connections between Fortunate Families, PFLAG, Dignity, CTA chapters, New Ways people who are around the country. And I wish we had a better way to do that, but I think we're missing a lot by not being more connected.
I also, we need to say that Fortunate Families does not have chapters. We're not a chapter organization, but we do have people in different places. And one of our listening parents is in Honolulu. So if this person would go to the website and find that listening parent, she could call and find out if there's other things, other resources right there in Honolulu, in addition to PFLAG, that would have more of a spiritual bent to it, perhaps Catholic, perhaps some other Christian faith. But definitely we would recommend people.
Mary Ellen, can you tell Jean how to find this resource, this listening mother in Honolulu?
Uh, I can. Gene knows.
Okay.
Gene knows Susie Roth.
All right.
I know he knows Susie Roth.
He does. He does indeed.
Okay.
All right. Next question here.
Okay. If Susie doesn't know, I don't know who knows.
So, Randall from Somerville, New Jersey asks, has Cardinal Dolan been messing with you guys already? So have you had any conversations with the good Cardinal?
No, I think there's, in one way, your introduction as the Fortune Families being one of the best kept secrets. That's sort of an indictment of our lack of marketing skills, but it's also got a positive side. The bishops haven't really gotten on us a whole lot, so we have not heard from Cardinal Dolan. In fact, we'd love to hear from him. I know Marianne has suggested that, has written to him and saying, can we meet with you? And she mentioned Mary Ellen and I to meet as parents with them. And as far as I know, Marianne did not get a response.
So, Casey and Mary Ellen, quickly, what would you say to parents who are telling you, I am holding on by my fingernails to this church right now? I'm angry, I'm discouraged. What would you say to them?
Well, everyone has a different kind of breaking point where their fingers won't hold anymore. That the stress of that is damaging to them. But I do know that I know that there are many Catholic people, parents of gay kids and others, who feel deeply almost responsible for the church. They believe what Vatican II taught us, that we are the church, and they're just not ever going to leave. And that's very hopeful, I think. But some, like I say, they can't. It's just too great a stress and too painful, and they leave. But they take those the true Catholic values with them, and that's where, and you're seeing that in the polls, and you're seeing that in the secular realm, how they're bringing those
Indeed,
those true Catholic values.
It's hopeful.
Yeah, I think
it is.
When we first got in this ministry, as I said, the parents with the Tears and Fears, they were concerned about the salvation of their kids, and can their kids stay in the church? Now it's a question of the parents staying in the church, and I think if they can identify as Catholics, so that's what we ask our listening parents. Can you identify as Catholic? Do you consider yourself Catholic? That's the main thing. Then you are still Catholic in your core, and I think you have more leverage for change if you're operating within or in concert, not in concert with, but at least involved with the Catholic Church than if you are outside. But you can only be there if it's still nourishing you in some way. As Mary Ellen says, if you can still hang on with integrity, then I think we need enough parents to continue to try to make changes within the church.
And one last, more of a comment from Mary Hunt from Silver Springs, Maryland, who was one of our guests in our first season last winter. Mary, welcome. How about being Catholic and Buddhist, or Catholic and Lutheran, so as to move away from the notion that we are one thing or another, either or, sort of like being bi? Maybe we should let the Zen Buddhist respond to that one.
Yeah,
You know,
good idea.
the hybrid theology, hybrid faith. It's interesting. One of the things that's interesting for me about Catholicism is the whole idea of ecclesia and being part of a church. Like you are either in the church or out. And there's strengths to that and there's weaknesses to that. You don't find that as much in Buddhism. So I tend to be more fluid, but you know, there's something to be said for putting your stake in the ground and putting, you know, boundaries around what your faith is, which Catholicism does more than Buddhism. Um, it's a tough question. Yeah, we can, but I mean, at a certain point, if it gets too fluid, where are you? Who are you? Why do we need labels? I mean, I guess, you know, there is that sort of being, but on the other hand, there are labels and there are traditions and there are strengths and weaknesses. I don't know where I land with it, and I'm.
It's a good question, and I think
I don't know how to end the answer, but
we'll
it's a
invite
great
Marianne
question.
back to be our
It's a
guest
great
and
question.
tackle that question with us another time. I want to in closing. In closing, I want to mention
Thanks, Mary.
a documentary film I saw last night. It's just opening in theaters, at least here in the Midwest. It's called "How to Survive a Plague," and it's about the first AIDS activists in the United States in the early '80s, and then taking them through the mid '90s. These folks who were calling the nation and its governmental agencies and its pharmaceutical companies and its hospitals to the task of paying attention to this plague. And I was just overwhelmed by the tenacity and the fidelity of these activists, some of whom died in the midst of their activism, and others who are still around today to speak about it. Just amazing, their tenacity and their vision. And I gotta say, Casey and Mariel, and I see that in you, and we need folks like you, and we need to stand with you and speak with you too. We can't let you do this alone, along with your board and your folks, but it demands a lot of folks. But your leadership through the years and your tenacity and your fidelity to this ministry is overwhelming, and thank you so much for the witness you are, and Jim, thanks for continuing to love these parents of yours. They're good folks. Great to have all three of you, and we'll welcome back Marianne.
They're
You
great.
bet.
Thanks for having them.
Thank you so much.
And on behalf of a lot of our Fortunate Families people, we thank you. I've seen a lot of Fortunate Families people on the text, the chat line here, answering some of the questions. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, sorry, I have a bad connection here. I just want to thank all of you, Jim, Mary Ellen, Casey, and Jim Smith, for very enlightening and engaging conversation, and for your honesty in some not easy questions. Thank you as well to everybody who enlivened the conversation with your contributions. So just a few closing remarks. First, if you would like to share this conversation with others who are not able to be present, it has been recorded, and hopefully some of the echoes and all of that won't show up in the recording. We will send out the link via Facebook, Twitter, Dignity USA News, and I'm sure Fortunate Families will broadcast the link as well. So please spread that far and wide and let other people gain from this discussion. Secondly, we will be sending all of the participants who registered a survey, and we really value your feedback. It really helps to make this program better and better every time. If you'd like to send us a comment beyond the survey, you can do so by emailing questions, comments, ideas, suggestions for future speakers, etc. to qcf@dignityusa.org. I'd also like to add that Dignity USA relies on our members and on donations to fund most of our work on behalf of the LGBT Catholics and our allies. If you are willing and able to contribute, $5, $10, or more to support this initiative and our other work, we would be very grateful. You can make that gift at www.dignityusa.org or send a check to our mailing address. And I'm sure fortunate families would be happy to accept contributions for their good work as well. I'd also like to, this didn't come up too much tonight, but I do want to mention that Fortunate Families has a number of parents of transgender people among their listening parents and on their board as well. So the conversation tonight kind of focused on gay and lesbian folks, but they are very aware of transgender issues within the Catholic Church and are a great resource for that as well. So thank you very much for your participation. We'll hope you will join us for the upcoming events that Logan has posted up there. The next one will be held on November 20th and features Maureen Fiedler, who was host of the Gaze in the Eyes of God radio series most recently. Please invite a friend or two to watch with you. So thanks again to our guests, to Jim for facilitating, and to all of you for participating. Good night.
Thanks, y'all.
Good night.
Okay. Thanks,
guys-
Jim. That was good.